and I am here today with Mark Wharf. Mark, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role within the conference?
Sure. Thanks, Hannah. I'm Mark Wharf. I'm a retired pastor in the annual conference, and it's currently my honor to serve as our conference secretary.
Wonderful. So Mark is here today to talk to us a little bit about all of the fun, kind of administrative, all of the things that everyone always gets confused about. So Mark, I would love if we could start with kind of an overview on the conference rules, standing rules. What do we need to know about that?
Good. Well, as I like to say, they don't call us Methodists for nothing. We have rules, we have policies, we have procedures. And the rules for our conference process, our rules of order, are printed in the conference journal, starting on page 208 in the 2022 journal. So if you want to brush up on that before we get together in Sacramento. Almost as a postscript, our rules state that Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, shall govern proceedings of the conference in all matters herein specified. Now, people get kind of clinched up about Robert's Rules of Order, and unless you watch C-SPAN 12 hours a day, you might not be the world's greatest expert on Robert's Rules or parliamentary procedure, but not to worry, because our annual conference session this year will be presided over by not just one, but two of the most profoundly gifted presiding officers in the United Methodist Church. Bishop Sally Dick and Bishop Warner Brown have earned the admiration of their peers for their excellent gifts as presiders. They have an uncanny ability to help the body accomplish what it wishes to accomplish. They have both presided over sessions of the General Conference, which is an indication of their skill level.
Mm-hmm.
And if they find it necessary to consult, seated right behind them on the dais is our conference's extraordinary parliamentarian, Paul Ekstrom Fernandez. So we're all going to be in good hands.
Good to hear. Good to hear. And what about the legislative process?
Well, again, the conference rules set out that process. And the way that we like to work together when we can is to assign legislative matters to legislative sections. So the conference is multiplied into smaller groups whose job it is to consider a portion of the conference's legislative agenda, and to do that in small groups where more people have the bandwidth to be able to participate in the process, to amend, that is to perfect the legislation that's been proposed, and then to recommend to the plenary session whether that item should be adopted or not. And so the section has a very important advisory role to the plenary of the annual conference. We have not met in-person legislative sections since 2019. The last year we met in Modesto. In 2020, we were all online for annual conference, and we had an online single legislative section. We had a similar process last year. So we've learned how to do legislative sections in a large group on Zoom.
Yeah.
So for some, they have not yet attended our annual conference when we did meet in these smaller legislative sections. So this will be a good experience. And I would just encourage us all to brush up on the rules so that we'll come prepared to work together in that process.
Yeah, and I'll mention anybody can find last year's journal on our website, cnumc.org. It's pretty easy. It's quick linked right there on the front page. And of course, while we always like to be as timely as we can, late items do happen. Do you have any advice regarding submitting those late items when and if they do come up?
Sure. Last year, some concern was expressed during the annual conference session that some very important matters didn't get into our hands until just a few days before we gathered in Sacramento. Well, the Commission on the annual conference session took that input to heart. And so this year, we have let people know back in November that our legislative calendar this year calls for a May 1st date. Now, by the time we're gathered in these meetings, that May 1st date will have passed. So we're looking backward now. But it does happen that items, sometimes concerns in the world that don't adhere to our legislative calendar take place, and individuals, churches, want to encourage the annual conference to speak or to take action on matters that may be very timely. We have a process for that. And so on our initial plenary session, there is an opportunity for persons or groups who wish to present what we call late items, very timely up to the moment items, to the body to make a brief statement about why they're coming at this point. And then the body has a chance to vote to accept those, to receive those items. And if it does so, then that item or those items are assigned to a legislative section or sections to be processed along with the rest of the work that we've had a chance to prepare to work together on.
Awesome. Wonderful. And what about the voting process when we are at annual conference?
So in the process of our session, the presiding bishop will request a vote. Normally, we do that by raising of hands, and hopefully it's easy for the presiders to be able to ascertain how the body has chosen to act. If the vote is close and it's not obvious by raised hands which side prevails, we have a gifted group of tellers who help us with that process. And so we will call on them if the need arises to do so.
Right. And what do we need to know about voting cards? Will those be utilized this year?
In the course of debate on a given matter, whether that's in a legislative section or whether that's in the plenary session on the floor, times will come when folks want to participate in the conversation. And we have a system for doing that so that the presiding bishop can recognize persons, can keep us on task with making sure that we balance the number of speakers in support of an item and in opposition. And so we do that with a set of color-coded cards. So if you want to speak in favor of the matter that's under consideration, then you'll hold up a green card, and there will be a supply of these nice color-coded cards near where everyone's seated. If it's time for a speech against the matter, and that's the side that you want to speak to, then you hold up a red card. It's pretty easy, like a traffic signal, right?
Yeah, red light, green light.
But there are a lot of reasons why you might want to hold up a yellow card. It may be that you have a point of order you want to raise. It may be that you'd like to offer an amendment or a substitute for the matter that's on the floor. And so, again, because we're Methodists, we have a form for that. And these forms are available. They're near where we sit. I'm not doing a very good job of getting that on camera. But these are also, there's a large supply of them at the pages table. And so if you think you might want to help perfect an item from the floor, you might want to be sure you have a supply of these handy. And you just complete it by printing very legibly the wording that you'd like to use in order to amend the item that's currently before the body. And then you'll raise that yellow card, to get the bishop's attention. You'll be called on, directed to one of the microphones. And then we ask that you bring this piece of paper with you so that you can clearly state your proposal for an amendment. Once that's been seconded, the bishop will give you an opportunity to speak briefly to it. And then we'll make sure that the pages get that up to the secretary's table, because before we vote on that amendment, we'll want to make sure that it's on the screen so we can all see clearly what we're voting on. So those little tools, those colored cards and those motion forms are there to help us do the work that we want to do and to make sure that everyone's contribution to the legislative process is valued.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, is there anything else in your role as conference secretary that you would like attendees to know, to be aware of?
The annual conference, the opportunity to come together as siblings from across the annual conference, from the length and the breadth of Northern California and Nevada, is always a precious opportunity to meet folks that we haven't seen for a while, to reconnect with old friends, and to meet new ones is one of the most important. I think of annual conference in a lot of different ways. I think of it differently as conference secretary than I used to when I was a pastor serving a local church, but I've always thought of it as a big family reunion. And it's funny how as you meet new people, you realize someone from the opposite end of the conference knows someone that you knew years and years ago. So as I like to say, it's not so much a small world as it is a really, really big family.
I love that. I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark. We look forward to seeing you and really digging into that process of doing the work of the church at annual conference.
Thanks, Hannah.